So Beth and I are going to be in lockdown until sort of mid-June. We're on the 12-week lockdown for vulnerable people. And the thing that's been depressing me, if I'm honest, over the last couple of days is like that still feels like a long way away before the end. Like we're still not even halfway there yet. And so in order to help me feel a bit less low about it all, I've been trying to focus not on the next 8 weeks or whatever it's going to be, but on today, just one day at a time, taking things one day at a time. And yesterday Mike was talking about abiding in Jesus, this image of Jesus as a vine that he gives to us, and we're the branches as part of the vine from John 15. And one of the ways that I've been trying to meditate and practice this sense of remaining in Jesus is by praying the line that he gives us in the Lord's Prayer. This is from Matthew chapter 6, verse 11. Jesus says that we're to pray, "Give us today our daily bread." And the word bread in that means very much physical sustenance, give us what we need to live. So for us today, that would look like give me some food, give me some finance to pay the bills, give me a place to live, give me what I need. And it's not that that's the surface level meaning and there's a deeper, richer meaning to that. That is very much the meaning of it. Provide for me what I need to live, God. And the reason Jesus tells us to pray this is because the Father wants to provide that for us. It's not as a kind of like say this and you might get lucky and maybe one day if God's having a good day, he'll provide for you. It's no. The Father wants to provide your bread for the day, so come to him and ask. Beth and I have got a history now over these years of God's provision for us that we remind ourselves of regularly when things are a little bit tight. And they encourage us that God really does want to provide for us. But also the word bread, in addition to it being those physical needs, it is also our spiritual needs. And Jesus compares himself to bread. So this is in John chapter 6, verse 35. He says, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." And so he's saying, again, come to God and ask for everything that you need to sustain yourself spiritually and emotionally. It's only in him that we find that. St. Augustine famously said, "Our souls are restless until they find their rest in thee." And it's that rest that comes only from almost the embrace of a Father who loves you unconditionally and who knew you before you were born and knows every single hair on your head and every day of your life, and the peace that comes from just sitting in his love. Jesus is saying, come to me for that bread too and expect it from me. But also what this line does is it gives us an insight into the way that God likes to work, because it says twice the word daily. Give me today my daily bread. Very deliberately, it doesn't say, give me my weekly bread and I'll see you next week. Give me my monthly bread and we can touch base maybe on the 1st next month. Or give me my annual bread. It says, give me my daily bread. Probably the best picture of that in the scripture, this lived out in practice, comes from the book of Exodus, where the Israelites had just been rescued from slavery in Egypt. They'd gone through the Red Sea and they find themselves in the wilderness, wandering around in the desert. So they were in one social context and that kind of disappeared, and they found themselves in a radically new social kind of environment, trying to struggle and work out how to do life in this context. Does that remind you of anything? And in that environment, they struggled to trust God to provide for them. Does that remind you of anything? And then God says, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Every morning you wake up, there's going to be manna. It's going to be this bread from heaven. It's going to be lying on the ground. You go and pick it, and then you just grab enough for a day and then come back tomorrow and there'll be some more tomorrow. And of course some of them didn't trust him, and so what they did is they stored it up and they found that the next day it had all gone moldy. And one of the questions I have from reading that story is, well, God knows how to make manna. Surely he can make new, longer lasting manna, that kind of lasts for a whole month and doesn't go off. Why is it that he insists on doing it this way? And I think at least in part, God insists on doing it that way because it was, yes, number one, about him providing for their physical needs. But number two, it was about him helping the Israelites get to a place of trusting him. And it was about them developing and maturing in their relationship of love with him, that they would come to a point where they're like, do you know what? I know you've got me for today, and even though I can't physically see your provision for tomorrow, I can see you and I trust your heart. And for us in this season, we can learn little lessons from them. So number one, God is trying to train us to trust him, not for a week, not for a month, not for a year, but for a single day. And as I've woken up and started my days, one of the things that I've been saying to myself is, Lord, I need you to provide for me to get to the end of this one day. And can I trust you for that? Yes. When I look at the longer term, sometimes I get a bit nervous, but I know I can trust you for today. So he wants us to trust him just for this one day. And then tomorrow, he'll want us to trust him just for that one day, and so on and so on. Secondly, I think what he's trying to train the Israelites to do is trust him for the ordinary stuff of life. So they've seen God do the spectacular, they've seen the plagues and they've seen the Red Sea part. And now he wants them to learn to trust him with what seem to be the little things of life. And in the same way, I'm sure you've got stories of high points and miracles you've seen the Father do. But during this season, while we're in this wandering around in this wilderness, it's an opportunity to trust him just for those normal, everyday things. Lord, would you give me patience with my partner or my flatmates or my kids? Lord, would you give me grace in this Zoom conversation? Father, would you help me to forgive? Would you, whatever it is, Lord, I feel low and I feel anxious. Would you meet me in this place with your peace? Would you help me to trust you just with those ordinary, everyday things? Because I know you want me to bring those things to you. And then finally, what we can do with this is we can see it as an opportunity, because, people can pray for you for all sorts of things. They can put their hands on you and pray for healing. They can pray that God would fill you with the Spirit. They can pray for, release of prophetic gifts and stuff like that. But get this, no one can ever put their hands on our head and pray that we would have a history of relationship with God. You can't just get that in an instant. That happens over a lifetime, and it happens on the way, and it happens as we journey. It happens in the adventure. That history of relationship with God is only developed one day at a time. And so the opportunity we have, one of them, during this season of upheaval, in trusting him for our daily provision, is that it creates in between us and him just a bond and a strength and an intimacy. Again, God could have designed newborn babies with a hump like a camel, so that the lady would kind of feed the baby, and then she'd stock him up for a month, and then put the baby down, and you wouldn't need to feed him. You wouldn't have night feeds. You wouldn't have all that hassle that we have. But instead, newborn babies need to be fed all the time. But what's happening there as they drink the milk is that not only are they getting what physically sustains them, but there is a bond that's being developed between them and the mother. And in the same way for us, we have this time where our needs are great and our daily needs probably feel very pressing. So let's bring them to him, and let's draw close to him, abide in him. And what we'll find as we do that is that not only does he provide answers to those prayers, but our relationship of trust matures and develops. It's an opportunity. Give us today our daily bread.